What's the length of this rod? Who said 7? Who said 7? You said 7? Who said, I heard somebody say 7. There it is. You catch it? There, that's all I'm good for. Y'all get one hat. So guys, my sponsors asked me to be here and come talk, and I'm one of those people at working that whatever they want, I'm here. There's a bunch of them in this room. You got Waterloo rods. This is a cranking mag. It's what I throw every redfish tournament I ever fish in. I don't break them. I love them, and I'm very attached to them. We got real sportswear right here. We got Mamba boats out front. We got Marker 54 lures here. So a lot of the guys that support me in what I do, and what I primarily do now is I chase redfish tournaments. From here to Louisiana to Florida. Last fall, I fished the Bassmasters Redfish Cup. What I'm really good at is not giving up on finding fish. So unfortunately, I'm 50 years old now, and I've got to do a lot of writing things down on lists so I remember to stay on talking points. So let me y'all get to know me real quick. I'm a South Texas boy. I'm from Corpus Christi, Texas. I grew up fishing the lower Laguna Madre in Arroyo City. We were about 12, 13. We moved to Corpus, started fishing. I became a fishing guide at 18. Was a fishing guide down there for 20 years. I spent a lot of time. I did everything, threw lures, threw bait, chased trout, primarily. Wasn't any good at either. That's why I'm not a fishing guide anymore. But a guy by the name of Jimmy Mayak that builds Mayak boats, and this is probably early 2000s, somewhere in that range, said, hey, Kevin, why don't you do redfish tournaments? Y'all do all these bait tournaments and all this other stuff. And I'm like, man, I think redfish are easy to catch. They're not that hard. We catch them all the time. They're rubber lip. You know, they're not that difficult. So we started fishing them. First couple we did great. We ran into an event where we are drift fishing through a flat in Corpus. There's fish swimming by us everywhere, and we can't catch them. We're pulling everything out of the tackle box, and we can't catch them. That day changed me for the last 20 years because I wanted to know how to catch them. Like, why can I not catch them? I know guys with bait can catch them, but with lures, we should be able to catch these fish. And that's when I learned that redfish do not always eat. People say they do not, and it'll prove it time and time again. But that's what started me out tournament fishing, and that's why I'm standing up here today. All these people on this jersey, they're the people that support me. I've been with majority of them a very long time. They're all my family, and if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be doing any of this. A guy by the name of Jay Watkins, he's a fishing guide in Rockport, Texas. I was 18 years old. I might have been 19 years old. Back when I was a kid, we didn't have social media. If we wanted to see what was going on in the fishing world, there was a publication. You literally had a little fishing magazine named The Saltwater Angler. You go in there and you'd see the pictures and see who the articles, and you'd read them. The guy by the name of Tom Nix, he's not with us anymore now, but he said, hey, let's go watch Jay Watkins at this seminar. And Jay's charging for this seminar. I know everything already. I don't need to go see this man. So he talks me into it. I go up there, and Jay's got, and as you can see, I'm not a chart person. I'm not gonna, we're just gonna fly by the seat of our pants on this. Jay's talking, and I'm listening, and I already know everything he's talking about. You know, in my head, there's nothing this man can teach me. And he said one thing in that seminar that stuck. He said, everybody in this room has caught fish, correct? For the most part, right? Most everybody in this room has been on a bite at some point, regardless of what species it is, whether it's trout, bass, offshore, where you're catching them, and we all kind of chase that. How many of us, when that happened, looked around and paid attention what was going on around us? How the bait was acting, how the birds were acting, what was going on. Well, I was one of those people. I had never done that. If I'm sitting there catching trout on a rock, I'm worried about the next fish. I'm not paying attention to what's going on around me. And Jay's the first person that opened my eyes to, if you can pay attention to what's going on around you when you're on a bite and when you're where fish are, you can find fish in every bay system you go into, whether it's Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas. And it's true. The man's right, and unfortunately he's a very good friend of mine. He's normally right on most things, and he likes talking a lot more than me. My point to that being is, if I can sit here and say one thing to y'all today that will stick with you and make you a better fisherman and make you change your mindset on fishing, then I feel like I've done my job. One of my big things that I try to teach everybody, and I tell people this all the time, partners, I fish with a lot of really good guys, and they're a lot better fishermen than I get to learn from them. But one of my big things is you need to fish where fish are, not where you want them to be at. All of us as fishermen say, well, you know, I caught them on that rock yesterday. And you go back there today, tomorrow, and you're like, I caught them here, and you sit there all day long and you don't catch them. Well, go find them. So try to spend your day more, and I know it sounds ridiculous in a way, but people get stuck in a rut on fishing, on doing the same thing over and over again, and not trying to put yourself where the fish are. You know, figure out the patterns, figure out the tides, start thinking differently, put yourself where they are. You know, don't sit back and wait to go in on something, go get in on it when it's going off. You know, whether it's birds working, whether the bait's acting right, get up there and get to it, get to going. But it's just kind of one of my little things. So primarily what I do now, what I've done about the last 20 years is sight cast redfish. The redfish tournaments we fish, the only reason we're fishing them is because we like looking at a fish, throwing at a fish, and catching it. And majority of us that do it will do it all day long and still throw at the last one when we should be going home to dinner. It's not something that's for everybody, but you would be surprised the amount of people that have not seen a fish in the water with their eyes. And when I was guiding, I would take people primarily in the fall, and I was surprised by the amount of people that are like, when they actually get to visually see their first redfish in the water, how much of a satisfaction that was for them, and it became an addiction. And some people weren't interested in it, but it's similar to hunting. So if you're a hunter, you like hunting, you like chasing things, it makes days go by very quickly. You don't realize it makes decades go by very quickly, but it's a very fun way to fish. And it's different than always blind casting and not knowing what you're throwing at. You're specifically looking in the water for fish to throw at them and catch them. It can be some of the funnest things you do. If you haven't done it, there's a ton of good guides down here in Lower Laguna Madre and Upper Laguna Madre that do it. Louisiana is a great fishery. You want to go somewhere, if you're going to do it and you haven't done it, you want to go with guides that do it for a living. You want to go with guides that are going to put you on fish so you can get educated and get brought along quickly. If you've already done it, you need to work on patterns and area codes. One of the common misconceptions on fishermen, as I grew up, there was not that many people on the water, especially, you know, spring break till the kids go to school there was, but during the winter we didn't see anybody. I'm getting to see now how our fishery is changing in Corpus, Upper Laguna Madre, off pressure. Corpus is a Newport A. I mean, it is 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It is turning into Florida all over again. And I used to listen to my Florida friends complain about how good we had it. You start to understand the more people that are out there throwing at these fish every single day, the more as fishermen that we have to adapt to that. Very simply, he's got a spinner. Is that a spinner rod in your hand? He's got a spinner rod. You'll see a lot of Florida anglers sight fishing redfish with spinner rods. Why? Because they can put lighter line on it, throw farther, less presence in the water, and I hate to say it, but they can throw farther than somebody can with a bait caster. You know, they'll put 5-8 pound test line on it and hum it out there. They start changing. You'd notice the colors on the baits, like Marilure makes a mud minnow. It's just a small paddle tail plastic. But you'll notice the color selection. If you'll go on their website and look, you'll see a lot of colors that aren't normal for Texas, right? We have Texas roach, black and chartreuse, white and chartreuse. Majority of the lures we throw, 90% of the time, are on an 1/8 ounce, 1/4 ounce, or 1/2 ounce jig head, and it's got a paddle tail on it. That's typically all we need. But you notice that our color selection doesn't work in their water. If I go to Florida and take those lures to Florida, unless those fish haven't been messed with, they're not going to eat it. I got to start throwing neutral colors. I got to start throwing Little Johns. I got to change the way I'm doing things. And that's what's happening in Texas. You're noticing stuff close to boat ramps, and I know Rockport, Port A, Portal Connor, a little bit of Matagorda has dealt with that. In Corpus, we haven't dealt with it, but we're starting to see more and more fish every day that are, I would say, for a lack of a better term, you'll notice when you drift by black drum, a lot of times they'll let you get very, very close to them. And they may just lackadaisically come by the boat. We're starting to see that on the flats with redfish just because they've been spooked so much they don't want to run anymore. Or they've been, had cut bait thrown at them. My point to this is, whatever you're throwing soft plastic-wise, be open-minded to change your colors, to try to figure out what fish react to best. And what I mean by this is, for years we all threw Berkeley gulp. We'd get a white gulp and we'd pitch it over in front of a redfish and they'd eat it and we'd land it. And that, it was the better part of 10 years. That's the only lure you needed. Louisiana, Texas. Then you started seeing a change. You started noticing that we normally, as tournament anglers, wind up finding, I hate to say it for lack of a better term, almost every fish we can find. If that fish is less than 2.5 foot of water, we're finding it at some point in time. We don't see the green, and when I say green fish, we don't see the fish that aren't pressured now. We see more and more pressure from Louisiana through Texas. And as anglers, we have to get better at making sure we're using our brain on what we're throwing, how we're throwing it, why we're throwing it. You know, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about majors and minors, right? Majors and minors matter a lot. They matter a lot in trout fishing. In red fishing, it doesn't matter as much. You know, I hate to say it, but it's the truth. At the end of the day, a major and minor is the same thing. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, somebody's catching fish right now. You can blame it on, well, we're on the backside of the minor, oh, the tide's wrong, oh, the current's wrong. But you know what? There's somebody out there catching fish right now. And that's a mentality you have to go with every day. I fished a tournament in Florida here, the end of October, a Bass Masters tournament, RedFish Cup, in Apalachicola. I fished Florida probably overall about 10 times in my life red fishing. And everything else in Florida is a blast to catch besides the redfish. Their redfish gets pressured 7 days a week. They've got a guide throwing bait at them, or they got somebody fly fishing on them. They're very pressured fish. And Florida's the place that taught me how to light line things with my experience there, especially in clear water and high pressured areas. And now we're doing that here at home. Now I find myself up by the bridge on the JFK Causeway, having a spinner rod with light line, 8-foot leader on there, and you're throwing at fish and they act normal. You know, less presentation. But who has fished Louisiana here? Have any of y'all fished Louisiana? Bass fishing? Well, how do I know that? So, of Texas and Louisiana on redfish anglers, we talk about what's the best state to redfish in. And most people will say Louisiana. And Louisiana is a phenomenal state to redfish in. But if you talk a day-to-day basis on what's better and consistent, Texas will beat Louisiana. Especially South Texas, Lower Laguna Madre, Upper Laguna Madre, strictly because we don't have as much tides as Louisiana does. You know, they have a lot more bait, they have a lot more redfish, but our fish from the spring, you could say late winter through May, will primarily live in the same area codes. You know, you take, let's talk about Corpus. Very south of Corpus in the Upper Laguna Madre, there's a bay system called Nighthawk. You know, if you go in there in November and you see a school of redfish in the corner of the flat, odds are that school of redfish is still going to be there in March and April. You do that in Louisiana, it doesn't work that way. You may find them in a pond in January, you may come back in March and they're not there anymore. So, and my point to this being is, our state is a great state for redfish, and it's a great state for trout fishing. The Lower and Upper Laguna Madre are both estuary systems. Those fish grow up there. They live their life there. Some of them leave and go offshore, some of them don't. You know, a misconception on redfish is every redfish goes to the jetties to spawn. It's not true. Upper Laguna Madre, our redfish will spawn in the bay system. They do not leave. We do have some migration from the north, but for the most part, what lives there is what's always going to be there. We have a school of oversized reds down south and up north that we find every fall. There's less of them now than there ever has been before because of the freezes. But my point to this being is, as fishermen, we start off wanting to catch a fish, right? Then we go to we want to catch a limited fish, right? Now, eventually we get to the point where we want to catch a big fish, right? We want to chase the trophies. And then eventually we get to the age as we start to get older that have been fishing our entire lives to realize the conservation side of fishing. And we need all as fishermen to get to the point where they ain't no problem killing and cooking whatever you want to cook. But, you know, kill what you need to cook. Don't kill for no reason. I killed every fish that touched my deck for the better part of 20 years. Probably one of the things I'm most ashamed by in my life. But I didn't understand. I was young. You know, that's what you did. You killed limits. You put them on the ice chest. You put them on the deck. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing it by far. If you're going to utilize the meat, utilize it. But let's not waste fish because our base system's getting affected by it. We used to have schools, I'd say mid-June on 200, 300, 400 fish schools. We don't have that anymore. We have 20, 30, 40 fish schools. And that's all from fish getting killed because of an estuary system does not get restocked. It has to get restocked through the CCA. It will not restock itself. I've lived through this in my life. When I was little, we couldn't catch redfish because of gill nets. We didn't have them. CCA in the state did a restocking and then we got them back. So it does need help, but try to be the fisherman that tries to catch them in every condition. If it's blowing a northern, I mean, hey, I know you'll hear a lot of people say, well, I don't want to go fishing. Well, you still get to go fishing. You can sit on the couch any day. So as a fisherman, if you tried to figure out how to catch your fish in any conditions, you're better off. I'm a tower boat guy, and what that means is for the last 20 years of my life, I drive in a shallow draft boat with a tunnel, with a Yamaha, with a TRP on it, which means I can set it down at 8 inches of water and jump up wherever I am. And the reason for that is I like sight fishing. That's all I do. in Corpus, we have an area called the 9 Mile Hole. It's 30, 45 minutes down south, right? So I could be down on the deck of a boat, running a boat to go fishing down there, or I could be standing up here 5 foot in the air where I get rid of the glare and be looking while I'm driving. That doesn't mean burning shorelines. That doesn't mean getting on the bank and disturbing every other fisherman. That means paying attention to what's around you, you know? And it's always been something that I enjoyed. I started it as a young age. Didn't like it at first, but in most of the problem with tower boats, or as a lot of people refer to them as burn boats, it's the operator. You very rarely will hear me ever complained against. I'm the most respectful angler on the water. I go a long way out of my way to not do anything wrong to anybody else, because I don't want to ruin somebody else's day. My point to this being is, I used to hate them. Thought it was the most worst thing you could ever do. They're just driving around burning up fish everywhere they are. It's one of the best tools you can ever utilize. Offshore fishermen done it for years. First one I've ever seen in my life came from Florida. I was probably 14, 15 years old. The problem we have is like cars on the highway. It's the driver of the boat that's a problem. When people are disrespectful on the water to other anglers, it's totally unacceptable in any situation. But my point to that being is, I'm a sight fisherman, so if I'm gonna go fish, my favorite way to fish is take a big grass flat, get up top of my tower, drift, and fish. Drift where I have control of my boat from that wheel behind me, which means I turn the steering wheel. If I want to drift that way, hit that sand pole, I cut it over there. It's the closest thing I can get to poling. When you pole yourself around sight fish and redfish, it's quiet. You're in a small boat, less presence. Fish don't know you're there. You can get closer to them to catch them. When you're in a bigger boat, that pressure they feel, and the more fishing pressure they've had in their life, the more that distance gets shorter. But I'm a drift fisherman. It's what I've done my entire life. It's what I still do today. It's what I do in Louisiana. I try to recreate that situation wherever I go. Because one of the most enjoyable things about sight fishing that I try to tell people is when you're drifting on a clear, reasonably clear flat where we're standing literally 10 foot off the deck. We can see past the end of our cast, but let's just use the end of our cast as an example. It is one of the most peaceful things you'll ever do. You just drift a grass flat, look at single fish, try to catch them. During the spring, I'd say March, April, May, especially in Corpus, especially from, let's say, Baffin Bay all the way to Mansfield. We have a lot of trout on our flats. They live there a lot. They don't always sight cast well. They sight cast great in the spring. They eat very, very well. It's one of the funnest things I've ever done in my life, and I still do it every year. But, you know, as far as we talk about areas, I've fished Port O'Connor some. I dislike Port O'Connor. Overall fishing pressure, there's too many people on the water. You can't do anything. I love Matagorda. Matagorda's just limited on the number of what for lack of a better term, lakes, and you got too many people fishing the same real estate all day long, you know? I start coming this way and get to Bastrop, get to Galveston, which I love, and get to Lake Charles, which I love. You know, this way I've spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time, especially Bastrop North, all the way through Louisiana to the Mississippi border. I pretty much know every inch of that water by the back of my hand, and not by learning it on a GPS. But I would probably tell you my favorite place to fish overall, besides my traditional drifting sight fishing, is Lake Charles. Lake Charles to the Texas border, that marsh, and there's a lot of public marsh there that's not all private, is not overfished at all. There's very little people that fish in it. It's a fishery that has bass, it has trout out in the lake, and their red fishing's great. It really is, and it's untouched. So how many people in here are sight fishermen? Sight fish, we got a couple. How many people over here have seen redfish in the water? Your success rate on catching them, 50-50, 30-40, pretty good? Oh, I like that. What are we doing tomorrow? Anyways, when you're sight fishing redfish and you're sight fishing fish shallow, the one thing you want to try to find is fish that are unpressured. Stay away from high pressured areas, especially if you only can fish weekends. If you're going to fish a weekend, let's say you're going down South Texas, let's maybe not go sight fishing Port O'Connor unless we're in a pole and skip. You know, let's maybe not go to Rockport, because we're going to get aggravated by the boat pressure and the traffic and everything else. There's a lot of real estate in South Texas, south of Baffin, all the way to Port Isabel, that there's miles of real estate for shallow water anglers to sight fish all year. And be by yourself, because you'll be surprised once you get away from major metropolitan areas how much you get back to what fishing used to be about. So, for lack of a better term, how many people here fish Galveston? Trout fish, redfish? Both? And primarily deep water stuff? Or are you sight fishing in the marsh? The marsh mostly? You spend a lot of, and that's it, that's pretty much all you fish? Y'all chase a bunch of schools in the summer? Everybody that fishes Galveston chases a bunch of schools in the summer? Y'all have any keepers on the schools anymore? Very rarely? Somewhat? Well, that's good. That's good. So let's talk about rigs. Let's talk about what we throw on a daily basis. And I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I apologize. So there's a lot of people that'll talk about rods and reels, and you need this rod for that situation, that situation. I'm a man, right? I do not have time to go put my 300 rods in the boat, right? And I throw the same setup besides trout fishing, red fishing all year long. It's just a 7-foot Waterloo power mag. I will boat flip just about everything I think I can get away with this rod. And I do not like rods that break because I don't take care of them. I'll drop it on the floor. Reel-wise, I've thrown a Abu Garcia rocket for, I think my reels are about 10 years old now, and I'm having to replace them now and having a struggle finding them. The two best reels that I found of late is the Luz rocket and also the Shimano Tranks, but I'm still going through the transition. I throw the same line primarily, unless it has to do with finesse fishing, is 40-pound Power Pro. I've never switched to anything else. You retie your knots every 3 to 4 fish, just retie the knot. You won't have an issue if you're tying straight bait or tying a leader. If I'm tying leader, I'm old school. I tie uni to uni. I super glue it during tournaments. I don't even get that complicated with it. But this particular rod, I will change the grip and put a split grip on it when I'm blind casting, because a heavy cork rod like this one, if you blind cast it all day long, just blind fishing on a flat, your arm's going to be hurting by the end of the day. But that split grip's pretty balanced. Oh, it's already getting that time. Oh, let me think. Sorry, guys. What's how many people here are soft plastic guys? Everybody? What's your favorite lure? Overall, Bass Assassin, Waterloo, down south? Mike Bossy builds a good one. So I would tell you a thing that I've been doing lately a lot, especially on finessing fish that have been pressured. Over there in the Waterloo booth, the Custom Corky, they've got a soft dine. You can work that soft dine on top of the water, like a topwater, and when a redfish eats it, it's gonna inhale it. Problem with it is you gotta back your drag off. But it's one of the best locators that I've used in low light situations. You know, we get periods of cloudy days where us towerboat guys can't just sit there and drift and find fish. And those soft dines is a great lure for redfish, and it's a really good lure for trout fishing. But he's got them over there. Guys, unless y'all have questions for me, I really got nothing else for y'all. I hope I said something. Sorry if I ramble too much, but hope I had something to help you out. If you have questions, yes, sir.
What about live bait?
No, as a guide, I threw live bait a lot. You take shrimp, throw it in front of a redfish, they're going to eat it. They're not too picky on it. You know, I mean, when I was younger, I used to put smelly jelly on them with under the cork. You know, I've thrown croaker a lot. I've thrown piggies. I've pretty much done everything when it comes to that. But as far as Corpus has gotten real big on live bait and on throwing cut bait now on redfish, which is did not used to be part of our fishery. The guide started it during COVID when we had the freeze, and then the trout limits got lowered. Our fishery was always a trout fishery, so primarily people left the dock, they go trout fishing. I did too. But once COVID hit and then the freeze hit and everybody became very, very busy, and every guide that owned a boat could fish 7 days a week, they started throwing cut bait at them. They throw a lot of sardines, cut mullet, cracked crab. It's a great way to catch them. It's not always a good thing for, in my mind, a estuary like ours, because they annihilated populations and generations of fish that's going to take somebody getting involved with to restock them. You know, whether it's just because I was there on the heyday after they stocked last time and saw how big of our population and what it is now. Don't get me wrong, we still have fish, but they struggled last year to catch them, same guides did. But live bait wise, I mean, shrimp and popping cork, I don't know how you can ever go wrong with it, you know, and that doesn't matter where Florida's the same way. I put a popping cork on last time I was in Florida with one of the Marker 54 shrimp for the Bassmasters deal, and Clark and I were convinced that these fish wouldn't eat anything. We had posted up on them for, 6-7 hours, and we just hadn't figured out how to get them to eat, and I threw a stupid cork out there, and the first fish that literally swims over and eats it. I'm like, really? This would have been a lot simpler after the 8,000 lures I just threw at you, you know, but I personally don't throw any live bait at redfish anymore, and I haven't done it probably since about 2009, just because I don't guide anymore, but it's the most productive way. When it comes to redfish on that aspect, if it's cut bait and it's windy, they're probably going to eat it. They throw a lot of shad, a lot of menhaden, but you're noticing a change. I don't see, a lot of it has to do with when I was younger, everybody had shrimp, right? Every bait stand had shrimp. You're seeing a change in that where they don't have the availability of the live shrimp, especially down south. Now, Lower Laguna Madre, South Port Isabel, they normally always have it somewhere. But you see a big distinction, I can't even speak the word, a big difference between bait fishermen and lure fishermen in general, right? And not saying that one's better than the other, but it seems like when you're a bait guy, you only throw bait. When you're a lure guy, you only throw lures, which we kind of do both of them. But one thing I don't do is I can catch just as many redfish on lures as I can of cut bait, just because of, number one, I'm old, so now I kind of know where they live at all the time for primarily, so every year's different, but our fish at home are real bad about getting on a flat and then they'll stay there for 6 months, until they get killed or get pressured. But I don't have anything against it. Louisiana, they kill more redfish than anywhere else on shrimp every day. They're killing them right now, and they already just got through having a bad freeze and had a big death. So, anybody else have any questions? No, that's a good question. The very first scent I ever put on a lure was actually called Smelly Jelly, and I used it for years. I thought it was the only way to go. I would tell you I probably do garlic more than anything now, and I don't know if it's just because the availability is easier for me. I don't, like you have Procure, that kind of thing. In Florida, they use it a lot, and it does work. I mean, I've seen guys win a lot of money because they had a little bit of difference. But for me personally, scent-wise, I've gotten to the point where I almost only use garlic. And it seems to work in every situation that I put myself in. When it stops working, I'll start using something else. And and it sounds ridiculous, but the minced garlic they sew in the jar? I just got a little jar in the boat, and I'll pour it in my bag and put it in my pocket. And I have seen a difference, especially last summer. We had about 6 boats around us, and these fish we were struggling to get to eat, and they had been thrown at enough that they probably weren't eating anything, and we got on a rampage with it. It's just a garlic. I mean, it's the only thing different. But I don't disagree with any sense when it comes to trying to get redfish to be redfish, which is to use their nose. One thing about redfish that's different is, or do they want to eat it on the bottom? That's normally what they want to do. But sometimes they want it mid-column, or sometimes they want it up top. You as a fisherman have to figure out, how does he want it? Does he want it laying, even lure-wise, does he want it flat on the bottom so he can pick it up? Does he want you to dust it before he gets to it to pick it up? Does he want it mid-column, smaller jig head, just twitching around like a shrimp? And that all comes from presentation, sight fishing, and playing, right? You get to learn how these particular fish want to have it that day. That's why gulp's so big. But I appreciate y'all listening to me ramble. I hope I helped out a little bit. I'll try to be better next time, maybe. Thanks, guys.